りおしまい。
And welcome back, Dragon Ballers, to Get the Mic, the only show where your host on the left, Owl,
and your host on the right, Brock,
dissect fiction for its mythological significance. I'm glad to be back. I know it's been a little bit of a hiatus, but you know, it's been a busy time of the year, let's just say it that way. And you know, it's Easter. Happy Easter, Brock.
Happy Easter.
Today we're going to be continuing on our normally scheduled content. I don't think we have any addendums or anything to add, and I think this episode will be pretty straightforward, but we'll see how it goes. Do you have anything to add, Brock, before we continue?
No, I think that last time we pretty much covered everything, so it's going to be pretty straightforward.
All right, so let's get into it. The first thing, we see a pair off between a bunch of the fighters. Let me slow this down. I was watching on a few times speed. So the first thing we have is the actual fighters. Who they're fighting against. This is my favorite one, possibly. The one with Yamcha and Hero or Shin. I think it just shows the lightheartedness, and like you can even see in the background of Shin, there's like it's almost clouds. It's almost like he's flying, right? And that's what we were talking about last time. And then we have basically just some setup. It's not a lot goes on that's like too super important. All that really happens here before we get the title card is they step into the ring, launch, give some words of encouragement. We see Shin pretty confident in his brother's ability, and the fight starts. And then we get the actual title card, which I did change the episode title card on our thing today.
I see that. We are accurate.
Actually had it a while ago. I think we planned to do an episode and then something happened. Like, you know,
Yep.
Terp wanted to do something.
Most likely.
And so then there we go. And here is the episode title in Japanese. So I considered putting it. I'm curious to hear what you have to say. Oh no, hold on. We got an alert on the stream. Oh no, it's nothing.
So the translated name is Revenge of Tao Pai Pai the Assassin. And I don't think it's a bad title or anything. I just think that it's more accurate to put Tien versus Tao Pai Pai because we know what Tao Pai Pai is at this point. So it's pretty straightforward. It's really about what it's more about Tien. It's an episode about Tien more than it is about Tao Pai Pai. So
And I would hardly describe the episode as Tao getting revenge.
yeah.
But, I think that's why I did it this way. And, Mercenary Tao isn't necessarily like super accurate, but because assassin does carry more of a connotation to it to mercenary. But we're kind of splitting hairs at that point.
Yeah.
So, do you have anything to say about the beginning here? I didn't. I didn't really have any notes.
No.
Solid. Let's continue then. So it starts off. The next scene shows the back area, the waiting area for the fighters, and Anonymous and Shin are back there right now, and they're just waiting for the match to proceed. That's pretty much why I was saying not much auxiliary stuff happens. What do we think about this? Smash the Beatles. I actually do not have any notes about this, but I just wanted to pause on it now.
About what?
The Beatles. Do you have anything to say about these Beatles?
No. I don't think that they have any particular symbolic significance.
Okay. Well,
Sorry, my view is a little behind yours.
no worries. It's just this black beetle that climbs up next to this brown beetle. I don't think there's any either. Kind of reminds me of the beginning of Z where they have like a little crab or something falls off the tree.
Mm-hmm.
So they are staring each other down. It's one of these situations. And the announcer is like, you guys need to start fighting. Goku recognizes that Tien is far beyond Tao. And Tao, even like in his own inner monologue, is saying how perfect Tien's stance is and how his technique is like really good. And so he is kind of not panicking yet, but he's kind of sweating it. Whereas both Yamcha and Krillin and Shen, Tao's brother, are all pretty confident in Tao's ability to win. And I think it goes to show I'm actually do you remember what Roshi says? What does Roshi say? If
I'm not
anything.
sure.
I don't think Roshi says anything. But
I don't remember him
what I was
saying
going to say
anything.
is it shows the spiritual maturity of those characters that can understand the level that Tien is above Tao versus those that are still unsure about where things are.
So I think that ties into what's actually happening as they square off for a long time. They hold it for an extended period of time, and someone, I can't remember who it is, says something along the lines of neither of them can move. That might be what Roshi says. Or maybe Goku says, but it points out that neither can move in this situation, and I think that ties into the reason that they can't, because Tien understands what he represents in this fight. It's not really about a personal grudge between him and Tao Pai Pai. but the fight's more about I represent this idea, the right way to move in the world, and obviously being an assassin is not the right way. And my instantiation in the world is big enough, and I've won this tournament before, so I represent the right way to move. So I can't show any opening for him to be able to seize on because of what it would represent. But then, as he's squaring off like that, Shin, the crane hermit, gets in his head, projects the thoughts, and reminds him that it was Tao Pai Pai who beat the fundamentals into him. And we get that flashback that starts off with basically him trying to block a Dodon ray and being blasted onto his ass. I think that's important that it shows that before this fight because of how it wraps up. The but I think the point of all of that is uh is that Tien understands that he's not doing this fight out of a personal sense, more of a sense of duty, at least to start out. And then, of course, the Crane Hermit tries to get in his head and throw him off of that, right?
Right, and I think that's the psychological element. I mean, it's quite obvious even in the early parts of the fight that Tien is not going to be bested by his the physical manifestation of Tao, even with all his cyborg enhancements and all of that. But the best weapon they have is, or let's say the best weapon the Crane School has against Tien is that psychological element, and it kind of tries to debase Tien, right? By I want I want to say it's almost trying to invoke Tien to adopt those same tendencies again, which would disqualify him from the tournament and all of that. Um, that it entails, and it also what you were saying, it goes in with the what you were saying about how they can't move. For Tien to be the aggressor in this situation as well is one that he doesn't even want to fight Tao. First of all, even like not even to get revenge for Chiaotzu, and that's something that's interesting because in the Japanese, like what we were saying earlier, is that it's called The Revenge of Tao Pai Pai the Assassin. But here it's Tien is even rejecting the idea of revenge to begin with. And so
Right.
he's already starting on a footing where he can't actually be the aggressor in this situation. He can't be out for revenge. He has to allow Tao to defeat himself in a way in order for the honor of the tournament to remain intact.
Right.
Sorry, someone and by someone I mean my wife just closed the door.
Someone.
Someone, it was Casper. Anyways, so I think that all has to do with it. And I really like what you were pointing out, and I think it's Yamcha that says they can't move. We
Hmm.
can go back.
But yeah, I think that that's the point of it. And it's also that I think that Tao Pai Pai doesn't want to make the first move. First of all, he says that he has a perfect defense, and he's shocked at the stance that Tien is taking. And I think what that means, other than obviously him taking a cool physical stance that defends all points, is more that an assassin strikes someone who is not prepared to defend their life. That's what an assassin is by definition. And so he's seeing that his status as an assassin isn't enough for him to find a weakness in Tien's mode of being, that Tien is expecting any type of attack from him because Tien has fully integrated what it means to be an assassin.
Right, and that's another thing that gets invoked with this flashback. Right, is that it's Tien's roots of being trained in this discipline that has allowed him to be this way, and it kind of haunts him in this to such a degree that he has to, like we've been saying, he has to maintain his composure more in this fight than any other fight that he's ever had.
Hmm.
If he breaks his composure here, he breaks his spirit basically, and he debases himself back to how Tao was and how he was before the 22nd Tenkaichi Budokai.
Right.
And it is
And I
Yamcha.
think that, yeah, I think that with like with that said, we'll see that come up further in the fight with the way that Tien interacts with Tao and the way he talks with him during the fight. And it's Tien really sees himself as a representative of the honor of the system of the fight itself and what it represents. The honor of the responsibility of being represented in this tournament to the world. I mean, that's what we were saying earlier this season is that the tournament, especially this time, is representing this sort of moving as a spirit rather than as an individual body, right? Moving as the archetype of the things that you want to represent to the world.
Right, and it's transitioning us from the, let's say, like mythical pre-cosmogonic to the modern post-cosmogonic that we'll
Right.
see after this. Is definitely a transitionary arc, but the tournament itself is such an important expression of that because of how it is representative of the hierarchy that exists across time, right? So even though that a lot of time is passing between the mythic and the modern, it doesn't really matter that the tournament as such still exists and is still a an expression of a spiritual, or let's say a spirit that can be subordinate to heaven and position itself in a way to be representative of that truth that's found from acting in accordance to that hierarchy.
Right. And especially now after we've had, Piccolo in the past tried to debase the path by which someone would be a martial artist and, Ma Junior being part of this tournament now representing that. It's important to have a positive ethic toward the you could say towards the efficacy of the tournament and what it represents and the natural hierarchy of things in the face of the ultimate threat that is being represented, which is to tear down that hierarchy and essentially get rid of the pathway that people would better themselves and create that connection to the heavens.
Right, and like you're saying, King Piccolo, he kills the martial artists, but Piccolo Junior is trying to kill martial arts.
Right. It's kind of to talk about how it's the difference between an assassination and like a terror attack, right? A terror attack is against a mode of living life, a mode of culture that cultivates types of people, right? To attack the tournament itself is on attacking a higher expression of being than just individuals, right? So we see that translate. We've talked about this earlier this season, but I think it's really, really like this fight in particular is really important to show the opposite of that, which is I fight to defend that,
Yeah,
to protect how it appears, right?
yeah, 100%. So, let's continue here. The fight starts with, oh, we can actually do that. The fight starts with Tao trying to seize on the moment when Tien's thinking about the flashback, but instead he whiffs and my player froze. I love that. Whoa. All right, there we go. So he whiffs and Tien smacks him a bit and then he goes down. And so
It's a little
that
bit
is,
subtle what we see in that dodge too.
I also have it sped up, but yeah, it is. It shows too that he's adopted this, even though he hasn't like trained with Popo yet. He's adopting this way of maximal efficiency, and so here he's not even trying to like knock Tao out. He just wants to make him quit, and he's showing how much stronger he is than him at this point. We have to also address like Tao representing this crude representation of malice, right? Um, is so well harnessed by Tien that he can move through this arena like nothing.
Not only that, so it's really sped up whenever you're seeing it, even in normal speed, but Tien loses his composure for a split second because he's bothered by the memories that he's being forced to remember due to what the Crane Hermit's doing. And Tao Pai Pai thinks he can seize upon him losing his composure for a second, but what we see is that Tien regains that perfect stance immediately, faster than he can close the distance, then completely dodges him, then comes back and then hits him before he even knows what happens. Which is to show that Tao Pai Pai has so severely underestimated Tien. Tien had 5 times the amount of time he needed to compose himself for that attack, you know. And it shows it really, really quickly that it's not like Tien has to react in a way where he looks surprised or anything. He's fully composed well before he can even get close to him. And that's
Right.
kind of the tone of this whole fight is that Tien is not even fighting anywhere near on the same level.
Right. It's like he is basically dealing with fundamentals because if he's already climbed Corin's tower, he already knows what it is to map on spirits onto each other and have adopt ones for yourself that um, can be beneficial in the fight, etc. And so at this point, like we're saying, like he knows what Tao's up to. It's just easy mode for him. It's important for it to be easy mode at this point. So Tien gives him the backhand, the big backhand. Oh, I think we missed something. Oh yeah, Tao goes in. Oh, that's the great. So Tao goes in for a kick and like gets deflected off and like lands so comically. Um, it's just to show too that like Tien can make a fool of him. And so this is where I was saying this is where I was iterating that he doesn't want to like knock him out. He doesn't really even want to embarrass him because of his, and this has to do with what we've been saying. Even though Tao is here to kill him and kill Goku and all that, he still respects the hierarchy that got him here enough to where he doesn't want to embarrass Tao Pai Pai because he was once his teacher. And it's all that's a microcosm of the macrocosm that exists around the tournament with the student teacher relationship. And so he doesn't want to debase that by debasing Tao, even though Tao has already kind of debased himself. Um, he doesn't want to make that worse, and so he's basically begging him to stop here.
Right. He doesn't I think that's a really good way of putting it. That's why he implores him not to act like that because he knows that he represents things that are bigger than himself. He represents the relationship between a student and a master. So if he acts in an indignant way towards, a previous master of his, then it's a bad representation for the world for how to act with the master, even if they aren't aligned with you anymore.
Right. Uh, this there's an English idiom. I don't even remember where I heard it, but it goes like this. You tip that your hat to the squire, even if it's bad for the squire, it's good for you. And basically, it means like it it's good for you to maintain the hierarchy, even if the hierarchy makes, or even if that person in the hierarchy is corrupt and makes bad decisions, etc.
Right.
Anyways, so let's continue. So Tien basically says he's stronger than Tao, and Tao's all salty about that. And so now Tao's gonna try and like go all out on him. Tien doesn't really care, and he's going to stop Tao from gouging out his eyes, first of all, which we'll talk about in a second, and then he's gonna bend his arm back and try to walk him out of the ring. So with the eye gouging part, that is what Brock was talking about a minute ago about assassins striking where their opponents are weak, let's say, or when they're not suspecting. And the eyes, the vulnerable part of someone, is also the way that they see the world, right? And so he's trying to destroy the sight that allows Tien to act in the enlightened way that he does. Tien obviously sees it and stops it from happening, but the very fact that he would attempt to do that further debases him, and we'll see eventually it's going to make Tien do what he does. But did you have anything to add there before we get walked out of the ring?
Yeah, I think that's why Tien walks him out of the ring, right? He's willing to play along, but what uh what's progressing in this fight is that Tao Pai Pai now is going against the spirit of the fight, right? He's not going against the written rule of the fight just yet, but he is going against the spirit of the fight by trying to cripple his opponent, which is ironic considering how Tien had acted the first time that he was in this tournament, right? Because he injured Yamcha. But um, this is to show that Tien is kind of trying to right that, right? He doesn't think that that's the right way to treat the fight. Also, by blinding an opposing martial artist, you rob them of their ability to see, to move in the world. And a true martial artist would understand the value of having a rival who can see and move in the world and check you, right?
It's
And
actually a
so,
really interesting thing to think about. I don't think there's many. Are there any major blind characters in Dragon? Like actually blind, not like Roshi blind.
no, I don't think so. I think that's because it treats blindness symbolically the way it does, though.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm just I never thought about it before. But yeah, see, we're learning new stuff with you guys every day here on Get the Mic. Yeah, okay. So let's continue.
But yeah, I think
So
that's why he does that though. He's like, all right, this has got to end.
for sure, for sure. And then he tries again. That's what it is. That's what it is. I do not wish to defeat you in a humiliating manner. He's got the arm, the hand that he was going for the three eye gouge, and then Tao tries to do it again. There it is.
Yeah. I love how he reaches up like, gotcha this time. Also, I think it's funny that if Tao Pai Pai was able to blind Tien, Tien would still beat him without his sight, and it would humiliate him all the same, right? It's kind of to say, yeah, even if you did blind me, I would beat you, and I would be humiliating you in a situation like that.
Yeah, and I mean, we know though that ain't gonna happen. So he
No.
takes him, bends his arm back, and starts walking him out of the ring. He's dog walking him. He's literally dog walking him. Here he goes. So this strategy here from Tien is kind of the most graceful way he can do it, right? I guess. I mean, he could just knock him out. He can't really make him submit. So yeah, I guess this is the best choice he has, right? But oh no, out pops Tao's hand, and instead of a hand is a blade, and then he cuts Tien with it. So this is like the big part of the episode, or like the big event, let's say. So it's funny, I didn't even realize. Yeah, Tien lets go of his hand there while he's getting sliced. But anyway, so he's walking him out of the ring. Tao slips out by unlocking his hand, jumps over Tien, and slices him with his new bladed hand. Now, the this is only able to be done not from some spiritual enlightenment or or a new understanding of the world or cosmos. This is done because of purely mechanical augmentation, and so it also it's not part of his natural biology, and we're going to talk about that in a second because he's going to get disqualified for it. But the just the act of like removing your hand and being let's say not one with your body and spirit is one that is already a corrupting ethos, let's say.
Well, on top of that, right? So what Tien has done whenever he grabs his hand when he tries to do it again and just starts dog walking him is to say that I fully grasp what you
Oh yeah.
are and what you're trying to uh, use as your would you say your ethic against mine. I fully grasp what you are. And so the reason that Tien is wounded here is that he did think he fully grasped him. And the reason that he was able to get out of his grasp, of course, is that underneath his hand, underneath the weapon that he was just trying to use to blind him, to wound him directly, underneath that was a blade that was actually crafted to wound him and specifically wound the tournament because using a blade goes against the rules of the tournament, and this is where he basically breaks the rules and says, "I don't care about the tournament. I care about you know." Or not that he doesn't care about the tournament, but that he's acting in opposition to the tournament, that he's aggressive to the tournament concept itself. And that also wounds Tien because Tien thought that he had grasped the level of malice that Tao Pai Pai carried, but was hurt in the realization that the level of malice was 1 degree higher than he thought it was, let's say, right? That he was actually malicious towards the structure itself and not just towards an individual person.
Yeah, and I like that. And I think what I was getting at is saying like the disembodiment of someone goes along with the, let's say, level of malice that they can embody. And so we've seen Tao be malicious against a single person with Goku, and that's kind of how he's been, right? And we kind of see that in this episode in the beginning with the revenge and all that. But yeah, I think this is where we get to it, that he's augmented his body to become a vessel of malice such that it can only be done at this point by machinery, and that's going to go against the rules of the tournament because it's not a spiritual ascension. It's not an enlightenment of any kind. It's actually an emptying out. It's kind of like how
It's adversarial.
the ring wraiths like slowly lose their bodies, right?
Yeah, yeah. He's essentially like a wraith. He's a spirit
Right.
of malice
Yes.
embodying a facsimile of a martial artist.
Yeah, and as he becomes more and more machine, it in he can embody it more and more. He becomes more of a vessel for it, and it's kind of the antithesis to Goku's emptiness with Popo, right? Because he's being a vessel in a much more holy way.
Yeah. No, I think that's a really good analogy talking about the ring wraiths, right? Because coming in contact with them like wounds someone, it actually ages them, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I the scar he gets, we're gonna
Yeah.
get to it, but yeah, I mean that's what I'm getting at with it. So let's get to that. Oops. So Tao cuts him across the chest, and many of us that watched Z first never really knew where this scar came from. It was just something he always had, right? And I think it's not to say it's part of the story or anything, but it's part of a lot of us Westerners watching it Z first. It gives kind of an era of a layer of history and almost mystery on like how Tien got it. And actually, unlike let's say, uh, oh, you're alone, your name is Han Solo. Instead of that, it's actually something symbolic to why he carries that scar.
Yeah, I think that if you look online now, there's a lot of those like hype edits for TN, like just crazy over the top hype edits with like fan art and everything. But I think that's rooted in something about Tien that's really like I came away from my first real serious watch of Dragon Ball feeling like Tien is supposed to be the viewer. You know, like you're supposed to
Mm-hmm.
really identify with Tien more than anybody, in sort of your own spiritual journey. And I think that this is something that if you understand what the show is talking about and you really do like care about bettering things, you can really identify with this scar, what it represents for Tien, because I think we've all sort of come across a situation like this before where we think that we're like, oh, I'm just adversarial with this person. And you have the realization that they're like kind of an agent of chaos, that they're actually someone that you need to be far away from because they're actually detrimental to the systems that they're in and not just like, drama, but they're actually like toxic and negative and they bring a lot down. So there's kind of this realization like everybody realizes someone is way worse than they thought they were whenever they get injured or wounded or something gets screwed up in their life, right? And this is
Yeah.
kind of like that. He bears this scar for the rest of the show,
Yeah.
coming into
Yeah.
contact with this level of malice, and that's the
Well,
theme. But
actually, he starts covering it up in Super, just so we're
Super doesn't exist.
clear. Yeah, just like Game of Thrones season 8. What is that? Oh my gosh, my freaking player. But yeah, the scar he carries is it's both one from the wound that he receives for the underestimation of the embodiment of malice that is Tao, that is all the things that we've been talking about. Tao represents, and his own malice that he has manifested in his life and has to carry through for the rest of his days, right? And this
Yep.
has to be the person to give it to him because he's the one that instilled this malice in him to begin with. So it's
And we talked about how he kind of beckoned this karmically, right?
yes, yes. And wait, who's he? You're talking about Tien, right?
Tien.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Right, he did, and it's because when you just to refresh, I think what we said is whenever he's trying to measure up to being this idealistic uh champion, let's say, that he has to purify himself through these things, through
Right.
his
His
past and
conduct
his faults and all that. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
in the previous
He
tournament,
has to atone. Right, exactly. And so now he's pissed. Now he's pissed. But see, the thing is still he knows still that it's even more important than his anger at this moment. So he asks him if he's lost his dignity, which we are already pretty clear on. But even still, it's it's Tien that needs to maintain the dignity of the tournament, even if Tao's lost his own dignity.
right? Which is why he doesn't just take him out now,
And then the other thing, not only that, but he doesn't let Krillin and Yamcha help for that
right?
exact reason. So,
And now I love this, right? Because, well, I guess we can continue once we get to the next phase of the fight that we're about to be in, but it wraps up nicely with what we were just talking about with whether or not Tien really fully grasps the level of malice that he's up against.
oh, it's always about grasping. Here we go.
And so yeah, he allows him to come at him with the blade again to prove that that essentially he was wounded by it by his surprise, not by his inability to contend with it, right?
Right. And the thing too is like, he was Tien's teacher. He's trying to be gracious to him. He's trying to let him go out without being humiliated. And instead of that, basically he gets spat on, right? And the thing is that is shocking to him. He's not used to being on the merciful side, let's say. And so him extending mercy and it being rejected is something that he's not used to. And it's something that Goku's honestly not used to. Like the sad face that Goku makes at the end. I mean, not to jump too far ahead,
Yeah.
but the end of
With
the
Frieza, yeah.
of with Frieza, it's like that's something that's very it's hard to contend with. And so even here, like that shocks Tien, and that's partially one of the reasons that causes the wound. And that I think there's a lot of reasons, like we were saying. But I like this line here where he says, "You cannot kill me with something like this." It goes to show that the advancement of Tien and his grasping of the world and the hierarchies and the malice that exists within it, and how to contain that, and how to let's say master one's shadow and integrate that into oneself, is such that he can't be killed in this way. He cannot be killed by malice alone.
Exactly, yeah.
And my player, I'm gonna have to reinstall this player. It's really bothering me. Ooh, continue. There we go. So then Tien goes up to Tao. Tao's kind of freaked out, but he's got one more trick up his sleeve. Oh wait, did we say Tien breaks that sword or that blade?
Yeah, snaps it right off.
And it's to show too, like we've been saying, like his grasp of malice is such that these tools and these, like, let's say mechanized augments that facilitate malice are only, like I was saying, they're only tools that Tien can manipulate easily, and they don't pose any harm to him. They're just tools, as in Tien's analysis. And so now we have this last effort, the super Dodon Ray, Dodonpa. And we saw too the first instance of the Dodon Ray is what knocked Goku out. Would have killed Goku without the Dragon Ball being there. All of that. We also saw it being used in the last tournament, the 22nd tournament, where Chiaotzu used it against several fighters and Krillin, like half the fight. And I think, I actually don't remember. I don't think Tien uses it against Goku, does he?
I don't recall. He
I don't
might
think so.
have.
They, yeah, I don't think so. Maybe. Yeah. When he does the four clones technique,
Yeah.
unless that's this tournament. Anyways, not to get too confused on it. That's the Dodon Ray, and so here it is. It's gonna be, um, all of the malice that is being embodied by Tao is going to be released in a single expression of spiritual energy, which is going to be the Super Dodon Ray. And so, kill me. So he locks on, and some people start to run. And then there it goes. He blasts him. He blasts him. But Tien, he doesn't even try to dodge. There he is. There he is, boys. Look at that man. Goodness. There we go. So Tien just yells, and it nullifies the Dodon Ray. What do we think about that?
Couple of different things. The first being that when he says that the Dodon Ray works this way, that the Super Dodon Ray is locked on, there's no way to avoid it, and it'll definitely kill him. A bunch of people start running, and Oolong tries to run away too. And Launch grabs Oolong and slams him into position. It's like, you can't run away. You have to watch this. And whenever I see that, I think about it's sort of like Oolong represents the fool in a sense. He's a very like foolish masculine, immature masculine character that represents sort of like the fearfulness and the tendency to try to like run away and not be direct.
Mhm.
And it's funny because Launch forces him to watch this almost like he's a stand-in for all of the cowardly men who are running away from the fights and don't get to see, right? Like he needs to be a witness to this because of what he represents.
Well, I think also too, it goes to this what we see exactly. The next shot of the crowd is uh Bulma closing her eyes.
Right.
So like, and we've already talked about the relationship between Oolong and Bulma, and like Oolong having to experience it is going to be let's say a healthy thing for Bulma in the end. Um but yeah, I also I think those little parts are important. They're not just cutaway like gags.
Yeah, I think it's that we talked about how the announcer is kind of like this witness that calls out the thing so that people are told what is happening because of how important it is.
Yeah.
And this is, I think, an extension of that too, that like you don't get to run away, but it's also it's Bulma who fundamentally needs to see it, and it's Launch who fundamentally makes sure that it happens through containing Oolong when he tries to run away. Which is, that's how Oolong's character is introduced, is that he's running away and being
Right. And I
contained and
mean,
pulled
we
back for
can even
Bulma.
go further than that to say that Blonde Launch is a woman who has a fully integrated masculine psyche as well. And helping Bulma develop that is something that she can do by doing this. And that's by allowing her psyche, her masculine, Bulma's masculine psyche to mature. And that would be Oolong. And by that,
Now,
has to bear witness to this.
yeah, yeah. Now that kind of sets up a transition and talk about what the deal is with the karate yell. So the thing that makes everybody start running is Tao Pai Pai's articulation that what he's doing is he's definitely killing him. And then that's what the Super Dodon Ray is, and that's what moves are in Dragon Ball is a use of words for a magical outcome, right?
Yeah.
And so he uses that he creates fear and he debases the fight by making people stop watching the fight, right? Which is what Tien was trying to stop from happening in the first place. But it's important that people see that the simplicity of the spirit that Tien represents overcomes that just through sheer uh, bravery and honor. And so that it's a simple karate yell that defeats it. It's not that he tanks it with his body. He actually dispels it with a karate yell, basically by saying like your masculine spirit, your bravery in the face of this kind of malice is sufficient to defeat it, right?
Well, I wanted to also um, induce this here. So when Goku fights Tao, he embodies Tao's malice to defeat him, and he's able to do that because he's able to map on spirits to himself because of his training with Korin. What we see here is that. So the Dodon Super Dodon Ray is supposed to be condensed malice, right? And so what is a yell? What is a karate yell? Why do they do it? They you do it because you're supposed to be adding force and breath behind your strikes, right? You're supposed to be putting not only your physical body in but your spirit into those strikes as well. And so we see Tien put his spirit into this yell, and because it's malice on malice, it's just showing Tien's just showing like this is like kindergarten tier. Like I can get rid of this easily because I can show you what this spirit looks like, and he yells and it disperses because of that. What do you think of that?
I mean, it's basically like the person who's getting in someone's face in the street that's like, "Don't mess with me. I'm a real one. I'm a real one." And then, the person on the street just checks him and says, "All right, then hit me." It's like I have that much malice too. I can express that much malice and I don't
Yes.
have to do it in
Yes.
this showmanship kind of way that I'm disembodying myself and doing all of these extra things. And this is the way that Tien defeats him in a cosmic sense, is that he defeats him with the simplicity of his spirit versus the high complexity and the technology that's being put into this through,
Yeah, he's
what
using his spirit, his breath, right? What we were saying
yeah.
about when we were talking about Popo. Um, and yeah, it is that the ability for Tien to have his sword and keep it sheathed, and like, okay, I'm gonna unsheath it a little bit to show you what this is and shut it down. And that's what he does. And you're right, this is the ultimate defeat of Tao. And basically, I mean, there's no real resistance after this.
Yeah, it's he has to prove to the tournament and to the people watching the tournament that you can have that level of malice and control it and still be a good person, and that your the strength of your character and the strength of your spirit and your willingness to do things for the right reasons will overcome that. So you don't despair when you see someone who's been your master acting in that way, because it doesn't doom you to be the same way, essentially, right?
And you don't, and that's another thing that Dragon Ball is not like, not really pacifistic, let's say. It doesn't say like, oh well, you still remain passive in this situation. It's this, when matched with this kind of spirit, it is appropriate and acceptable to adopt a spirit that can defeat it, even if that is one of malice. And it's not to say that there's no issues with that. We're gonna get to some issues with that later, but Tien doesn't really commit any here. He basically has a flawless victory, and he runs up and then he just punches Tao, knocks him out, and that's kind of probably what he will think about later. Like, I probably should have done that from the beginning, but it is what he eventually does here. But yeah, I think that's
I mean, that's the beauty of Dragon Ball, is that had he done that at the beginning, then the lesson of the fight wouldn't have been learned. And
correct.
so there's sort of all things in their due time that you see with these fights. People will be like, "Oh, well, it's just people powering up and yelling." And if you don't understand the purpose of the stages of the fight and what they represent, it can seem that way. But I think this fight is a really good example of why a fight that can last the majority of an entire episode with only a few punches exchanged can mean a lot more, right? It's not just powering up.
Right, exactly, because it has to do with the student-teacher relationship and the tournament and the cosmos. It has to do with interpersonal character drama, which people love, but it also has to do with symbolic actions taken by both fighters in during the fight. So, no, I think it's a really good one, and I think that it shows Tien is actually like really in contention. It really, I mean, it's not like trying to set up Tao as a jobber or anything, someone to like just set up Tien as a powerful opponent. But when we see, like, I mean, we kind of figure out already Goku's going to advance and he's going to have to fight Tien next. And it's like, okay, well, Tien has shown us this level of maturity and control and spiritual power that we really haven't seen anyone else but Goku achieve. So it raises the stakes of the whole tournament, I would say. It really
Yeah,
defines what this tournament is about versus the other ones.
I think too, for like younger audience members of the show, you watch this fight and then you're like, "Man, is he going to beat Goku again?" You know?
Yeah, yeah.
Because even though we know that Goku has gone up and trained with Popo, and he's kind of this mythical figure at this point, Tien has beaten Goku before. So we don't really know the extent that he's advanced at this point.
When he was like, I mean, he wasn't like fully in when the fight started. Let's say he was embodying an unholy ethos. So now that he's done this, like, how much stronger could he be? Thinking in kid terms, it's like no way to articulate it, but in kid terms, it's
Yeah.
basically that, right? Like, he's good now, so he's stronger now. So if he's good and stronger, he might be stronger than Goku.
Yeah, it's like, how much stronger does that mean he is? I don't know. He could be infinitely strong.
Yeah, yeah. Well, let's not get too ahead of ourselves because my player broke again for the 50th time. So Tien knocks out Tao, like we said, and he's not very like happy about it. He's pretty solemn, I guess is the best way I can say it. And without any expression, he picks up Tao, he carries him to Shen and tells him to leave forever. Uh, and then comes like basically the only admission of like defeat that we're ever gonna get from the Crane Hermit. He says, "You lousy ingrate, I never want to see you again." It's like, well, that's actually kind of your terms are acceptable, Tien. Tien would say.
Yeah, defeated.
Yep, and I think that it's true too that now we see the show itself has advanced past the problems that have been introduced by the Crane School, and so the Crane School is no longer necessary to the story, which is something that does happen in Dragon Ball when things are no longer necessary or spiritually significant to the story. They do need to necessarily get phased out.
And I like to see, a representation of that is how Roshi reacts to seeing this, right? Because Roshi comments, "There's no need for me to participate in this anymore if Tien is that strong." And happens at the same time that we see that the Crane Hermit flees, never to be seen again.
Yeah, the answer has been solved. Which ethic was superior?
It was proven
It was
at
proven.
this
Yeah.
point. It's
Yep.
not in contention anymore.
And so, see ya, Shen. Good riddance, you old fuddy duddy. That was from the sub too. So
Yep.
apparently there is a phrase in Japanese that means fuddy duddy. Oh goodness. But yeah, here it is. I had no idea that Tien had grown to that caliber. There's no point in me participating, and you're right. The sequence matters so much that it is then uh, that he decides that. And so they see the cutie herself. They start talking about Goku's match is the next thing. And
Well, the next thing actually is Krillin tries to talk to Tien whenever he leaves, and he's like, "That was really cool."
oh wait,
And the other two are like, "Give him some time. He's been wounded by this fight, essentially. Now let him go. He needs to go. He's got to
yeah,
go think about his life."
kind of yeah. I mean that is something that I mean he's got some malice that he still needs to mull over. I know we've had like Tien's atonement, the episode, and all that, but it clearly still is an issue. It's something that he is really resolving though.
Yeah, I just think I like that little interaction that it's not evident to Krillin, but it's evident to you know to Goku and to Yamcha.
Oh, one other thing that was very interesting. So Piccolo Jr. does not watch that fight at all. And I think it's because like we were just saying, it's almost a below issue. It's something that like Piccolo is not even deigned to notice because of what we were saying about the ethic between the Crane school and the Hermit school being in contention. Whether it is or isn't doesn't really matter to Majunior, right? It's the ethic itself, both of them, and any of them that would be subordinate to the tournament and participating in that martial arts process all needs to be destroyed, whether it's Crane School or Hermit School. I mean Turtle School, Hermit
Yep.
School. And so Piccolo doesn't even watch that fight. The first fight he sees is Goku versus Anonymous, which is this right here. And I think that's like the kind of the end of the episode. We still have a minute. What happens in this minute? Oh, nothing.
Nothing really. They
Literally
just stare at
nothing.
each other for a long time.
Okay. Well, let's speed it up then. Oh, but they got the dog, man. That's another thing that I briefly want to mention. As we've been saying that this is like a transition arc between the mythic and the modern. We see less and less animal people, sadly. But the mythic
Yeah.
element of it, having the animal people, is very on point. But as it gets more modern, we see less and less of
One thing I think is funny is the narrator at the end is like, "What's the deal with this woman who seems to randomly get mad?"
that. Oh my gosh. There it is, yes. Just who is this beautiful girl who seems to get angry at random?
He seems to get angry at random. Many a
Oh,
time a man has asked
Mercenary.
himself this question.
Yes. Anyways, that brings us to the end of the episode. So do we have any concluding thoughts?
No, I mean, I think it's very transparent at this point in the story. Like when we're talking through a fight, I don't feel like we're leaving a lot behind, you know? The show has done such a good job of setting up what the themes are, so whenever you see someone come back, it's pretty clear what they represent and what the person's going to have to contend with.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I agree with that. And I think that this fight was a really good representation of, because it just goes in beats, and each of those beats has a symbolic takeaway. And it's almost like you're saying, it's almost emblematic of the fights in Dragon Ball and how they're meant to be analyzed and meant to convey what they're meant to convey. Um, to the point, like we were saying, that Tien here has to overcome the malice of Tao, but not just Tao, because Tao's now evolved into this more vacuous creature that can inhabit more malice. And so it's not just the malice of Tao, but it's the malice of the ethic itself. And so that catches Tien off guard. He gets the scar and has to contend with the fact that he inhabited this malice at one time in his life as well. And so without debasing himself, he does eventually defeat Tao and uh, does it as gracefully as possible. And I think, like you were saying, I think it's a really great way to exemplify the fights in Dragon Ball.
Yeah, and also in doing so, finally defeats the Crane School and banishes their participation
Yes.
from the tournament.
And it also gets rid of that the procedural contention, right? There's no more schools that really ever come up in Dragon Ball where it's like, oh, this is the school you should follow besides the Roshi school or something like that. It's really painted as and I think this is for a reason. It's painted as Roshi's way is the divine way, is the Tao, whereas these other ways, which is just really the Crane School, is not that. And should and
Right.
once you know that, we got to move past that. And so there's no more schools that come up. The whole ethic contention is done at this point. And I think it happens in the mythic part of the story because by the modern era, both East and West had already figured that out.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that by the time we get to the modern era, we're dealing with cosmic threats, and it's it's enough to say that if people are engaging with a way of martial arts, it's been decided that they're moving well and resting well and right, acting well in the world.
Right. It's not like, you know, Frieza is a renowned martial artist emperor.
Right.
But anyways. So yeah, that was episode 165? 4? 6. 106 36.
136.
136, which was Tien Shinhan versus Mercenary Tao. I think that's everything we have. I hope you guys enjoyed the show. Do you have any closing things to say?
No, no, I think that we covered it pretty well. I don't really have any things I want to say about the next episode that I won't have plenty of time to say when we're talking about it. It's pretty contained.
Yeah, I thought this was going to go quick. Obviously, took an hour, as always. All right, cool. Well, this has been, like we said, episode 136. I'm your host on the left, Owl,
I'm your host on the right, Brock.
and we hope you guys have a good night.
Kakarov's success was like a demon in my head. How could he be a Super Saiyan when I, the Prince of all Saiyans, could not? my training in the solitude of space. When a violent electrical storm erupted in the skies of the planet I was on, I welcomed it. Like it was an outward manifestation of the storm that was raging inside of me. I was determined to survive.